So about a month ago, MSI reached out to me and asked me if I wanted to test out and review the MSI Claw A8. Of course, I immediately said yes. This was released months ago outside of the US. My guess is that, tariffs and other socioeconomic hurdles have prevented this from coming to the US, to the stateside. So I've been looking forward to this because this is technically the first MSI PC handheld with an AMD chip inside. It has a lot of the active cooling that we've seen in the MSI Claw as well as the A8 Plus, but without all of the issues that you would get with an Intel iGPU. And despite its unique design, there are definitely some improvements that I've noticed while playing games on it for the past month. There are still some hiccups here and there, but you can tell that MSI is learning from their previous mistakes on things. But okay, let's start with the basics. What's in the box? Well, there isn't much. You're going to get some paperwork, the unit itself, an AC adapter, the MSI Labo session to set up something to hold your PC handheld. It doesn't come with a case or anything like that for your PC handheld to protect your PC handheld. So you're going to have to go with like a third-party option unless you want to pay the $55 for the case that I'm seeing now at Best Buy at the moment. This also, like other PC handhelds, it doesn't come with a dock of any kind. So you're gonna have to go with a third-party option if you want to get everything set up to run on a monitor as well. And you want to make sure that you have the right wiring for everything to get everything set up and running, which is where our sponsor comes in. If you travel for work like I do, then sometimes you just need to get something that does everything. You know what I'm talking about? Like the last thing that I want is to have a cable that is only for charging and a cable that is only for using with a monitor, or a cable that is only there for high-speed data transfers. It just gets messy. This is Silkland's answer to that. This is their new USB-C cable that is USB 4 and Thunderbolt 5 compatible. It is essentially designed to completely unify your setup. It features a premium heat-dissipating aluminum alloy shell and a highly durable braided nylon sleeve that actually survives your everyday carrying bag without actually fraying. But the real reason it belongs in your workflow is the performance, the raw performance that you get out of it. It delivers 80 gigabits per second of bi-directional data transfers, meaning that you can dump your 6 gigabyte video file onto your PC and it will take only 1 second. For your monitors, it pushes 120 gigabits per second of display bandwidth. This is literally 3 times the speed of Thunderbolt 4. It's USB-IF certified. And with a built-in eMarker chip, it supports 240 watt intelligent fast charging. So you can safely power everything from your phone to your PC handheld straight up to a workstation laptop if you got one. So stop cluttering your desk with cables that don't do the job. Click the link in the description below and grab your Silkland cable today. And thanks to Silkland for sponsoring this video. All right, now that some bills have been paid, let's talk specs. I'm not going to waste too much of your time, so I'm just going to put all the specs up on screen. Feel free to pause if you want to see exactly what's here. But there are 3 things that make this PC handheld stand out to me. First, the chip is an AMD Z2 Extreme chipset, which comes with an AMD Radeon 890M for the GPU. The next thing is the memory. We're looking at 24 gigabytes of LPDDR5X RAM clocked at 8,000 mega transfers per second. Not bad, honestly. And we have an 8-inch 1920 by 1200 IPS panel, VR from 48 Hertz all the way up to 120 Hertz. This is the same exact panel that we saw in the MSI Claw A8 AI Plus and on the Legion Go S. And honestly, I kind of don't mind it. I know, it's not an OLED before people go down in the comments and start typing like crazy. It's not an OLED. And, it is what it is. But with the way that Lenovo is going about things, and the Legion Go 2 about, costing more or less like almost twice as much as the MSI Claw, the screen isn't horrible if that's all you've got. You know what I'm saying? Remember, boys and girls, the best PC handheld is the one that you've got with you. And, given how things are going in the market, I do think that we should talk about one of the most important things when deciding about a PC handheld and which one you're actually going to get. And that's pricing. At the time of this recording, the MSI Claw A8 AI Plus is currently listed at Best Buy for $1,299. But given how crazy the market is at the moment, who knows what the pricing is going to be next week? I mean, it could go up another couple $100. But okay, let's, do a quick tour of what is actually here. At the top, you're going to find the volume rocker as well as an audio jack, a micro SD card reader, ventilation for your cooling with 3 exhaust vents. I'll talk a little bit more about that later. 2 USB 4 Type-C ports that support DisplayPort, Power Delivery 3.0, and Thunderbolt 4, and a power button that also doubles as a fingerprint sensor. On the back, you're going to find 2 macro buttons that, if I'm being 100% honest with you, even though you can map this to anything, I rarely use them for anything, so sorry. On the front, you're going to have your Hall effect sticks and a slightly improved D-pad, which I'll also get into in a bit. Your face buttons, as well as your typical view and menu buttons and quick settings button and the Center M button. Now, when it comes to ergonomics, either way, the first thing that I noticed when I looked at the MSI Claw A8 was the fact that it lost its curves. Guys, I'm a sucker for curves. So, when I saw them on the 8 AI Plus, I was excited. It kind of sucks because it gives off a much less ergonomic feel. And yeah, once I got the A8 in my hands, it didn't feel great. Similar to the ROG Ally, the original one, and the Legion Go 1, the original one, it kind of feels almost half-baked. MSI clearly went for looks over ergonomics, and yeah, the aesthetics is there, but I mean, I don't know, like I got used to it when, I was playing games for a bit, but you could always tell that you were holding it. Like the angles were just too hard to ignore. And what I mean by that is that it wasn't like other handhelds like, the Legion Go 2 or the Xbox Ally X, where I forgot that I was even holding it. The angular design almost always broke the immersion that I had when playing games, which is, for me personally, that's what I want. Now, I've got to say, though, that, one of my biggest complaints with MSI Claw 8 AI Plus was kind of sort of fixed here. Like, it's not 100%, but, it's there. And that was the D-pad. The 8 AI Plus has a ridiculously hard D-pad that made it really uncomfortable for me to play. So seeing that they lowered the D-pad and also rounded out the edges is actually awesome. It's not 100% perfect. Let me be upfront with that. It's not 100% perfect, especially if you're going to be playing fighting games, but it's getting there. You still have to put in a lot more force than I would like to play games. And the D-pad is, it's great here for indies, but that's about it. I wouldn't be doing any sort of ranked matches on Dragon Ball FighterZ or like Guilty Gear Strive or anything like that with this D-pad that's here. The triggers here feel like they're straight out of the Xbox Series controller, and I'll admit it took some time to get used to them, but I'm not going to say that I'm a fan of them. But the more that I did use them, the more I kind of just started liking them. I know I'm contradicting myself, but whatever. Keep in mind that these are the same style triggers that were found in the 8 AI Plus. And that was something that I never really liked over there as well. I'll have a link down below so you can check out the original review as well. Now, if you wanted to adjust how the D-pad, the triggers, or anything like that worked, the Center M app is just like how it was on the MSI Claw 8 AI Plus. From the home menu, you have access to downloading a ton of different launchers. After you install them and, the games that are on those platforms, it'll, look at the default directories to have them loaded on here straight from the get-go. On the bottom, you'll have your user scenario, which, that's where you find your 3 TDP settings, your AI engine, your endurance, and manual. And in manual itself, you can tweak the base TDP from 7 watts all the way to 35 watts. You can also tweak the fan curves as well if you want to. You have control mode, which lets you tweak gamepad mode, desktop mode, and I'm assuming here, by the way, guys, that most of you guys are going to be using the gamepad mode more than desktop mode. So let's talk about gamepad mode. Here, you can choose different buttons to map out your dead zones, your trigger sensitivity, vibration strength, calibrate literally everything, and even gyro, which I personally do not use. Don't crucify me, guys. Now, in news and updates, it's pretty much exactly for that. This is where you're going to find the latest MSI news if you're into that stuff. But more importantly, this is where you find your driver updates. Connection is where you find your Wi-Fi connections once you give the Center M app access to that. And the settings is where you'll be able to tweak everything from the RGB to the master battery limit and a ton more. But let's go a little bit deeper. So if we take ergonomics aside and menus aside, let's talk about raw performance, because this tells a very interesting story. I'll be doing a full comparison between the MSI Claw A8 and the 8 AI Plus in another video to see if it's actually worth upgrading to. But for now, let's talk about some synthetic benchmarks before getting into real-world performance. I wanted to run Firestrike and TimeSpy first. Because the AI engine is a little bit, unpredictable, I decided to run both of these benchmarks at the maximum settings across the board for the manual setting that is here in Center M. So for Firestrike, I got 8928, and for TimeSpy, I got 3848. But let's talk about how games actually run on this handheld. I wanted to run these in the default settings, the AI engine, and also the endurance mode. And, I also wanted to see how things would run if I just cranked everything up to max settings in manual mode. A little bit of a heads up, because my capture card is a 16:9 aspect ratio, I tested everything at 1080p instead of 1200, but my guess is that, the performance should be pretty much more or less the same. It should be similar when it comes to that. But okay, so when it comes to the actual performance of your MSI Claw 8 or A8 in manual mode, we're looking at roughly around 35 watt TDP baseline, but you're going to be looking at Baldur's Gate 3 at 42 frames per second. Cyberpunk is at 52 frames per second. But the biggest thing that I do want to go ahead and point out with all of this is that I tested out Replaced because I wanted to see how that was going to run. And Replaced ran at 60 FPS across the board, no matter what, which is a little tiny bit disappointing, if I'm 100% honest with you. But it is what it is. Like, I kind of expected that to happen like that, because that's just how it is with an indie game that's locked at 60 FPS. Now, if we were to look at the AI engine, this is where the platform will go ahead and decide what is the best of the best settings that are here for your game that you're currently playing on. Now, this is kind of like an in-between. It's not 100% taking, the best of the best when it comes to your battery life, but it will try to provide the best experience without chugging the battery life that's there. So with the Replace, again, we're looking at 60 FPS, but if we're looking at Baldur's Gate 3, we're looking at 34 frames per second. Cyberpunk 2077 is 42 frames per second. Crimson Desert is 32 frames per second. Like, it's just, overall, it's a pretty pleasant experience. Now, if you're trying to get the most battery life possible, this is where things get a little bit interesting with endurance, because even though it's trying to save as much battery life as possible, you're still getting a relatively decent experience, again, depending on the games that you're playing. For Replace, again, we're looking at 60 frames per second, but Crimson Desert is 22 frames per second, which is a little bit less than I would like. I feel like 30 FPS on endurance mode is kind of an acceptable at 1080p. Obviously, if you want more frames, you can knock down the resolution. Cyberpunk 2077, you're looking at 31 frames per second, and these are not frame gen. This is all raw data. And then Returnal is 26 frames per second, and Baldur's Gate 3 is 28 frames per second. Now, if you're planning on sticking to 1080p, most of these games would more than likely hit 60 FPS on battery without any issues with some form of frame generation. But if you don't like frame gen, you can always render them at 800p and push up with some upscaling tech. Obviously, it's up to you and how you want to play your games, but I feel like 60 FPS is kind of like the bare minimum of what we should be striving for here with this panel. And, the VRR does help out, if I'm being 100% honest with you. A little bit of help from software isn't a bad thing, especially when you have, the AI software and how it works and things like that. But because things are a little bit of a crapshoot with the wattage on the AI engine mode, I wanted to test the battery life at hard wattages instead of fluctuations. So I went into manual mode and tested everything out that way just to see what I could go ahead and do. Now, with the efficiency that we've seen with the perks of the, Z2 Extreme, it's easy to understand why people are tooting the mid-range performance on this thing. You can obviously, stick to a 17 watt TDP and play for hours on end without any issues at all. But here's what I got. At a 7 watt TDP with a 13 watt total power draw, that's where this thing actually really shined, because you could literally get 6 hours and 10 minutes of game time. At a 9 watt TDP, 16 watts of total power draw, I got around 5 hours. At a 17 watt TDP and a 28 watt total power draw, I got 2 hours and 51 minutes. At a 25 watt TDP and 38 watt total power draw, I got 2 hours and 6 minutes. And at a 40 watt TDP, I'm talking about cranking it up all the way to the max, and a 59 watt total power draw, I got 1 hour and 21 minutes. And somehow, throughout all of this benchmarking, this thing was still quiet. And I don't know how MSI does it, but they seem to always be able to handle fan noise really well, especially in comparison to all of the other companies that are out there. Now, even when you were cranking up all the, sliders on the manual mode, this thing barely made any noise. And when you compare it to the fan noise on the Legion Go 2, this thing is quiet as a mouse. Now, if you pair the fan noise with turning off, your RGB lighting, then you don't have to worry about disturbing your significant other, while you're playing games, assuming that you have a significant other, that is. One thing that I do want to go ahead and say is that I kind of wish that you could crank up the fans even more. And this is just to squeeze out just a little tiny bit more performance in manual mode, because it's obvious that it's so quiet that you can technically crank it up a little bit further and push it even further in order to get a better experience in terms of performance. But that's just my opinion. Who knows what the engineers are able to do in terms of everything that is here. If we look closer though, it looks like MSI borrowed some of the engineering that we've seen on the ROG Ally X. And I'm talking about the non-Xbox One. And I can't blame them, because it works. But yeah, the resemblance is uncanny. If this is anything like what we've seen on the Ally X, then this means that in order to keep the temperatures, on the screen nice and cool, they have ventilation that goes between the PCB and the front screen itself. Keep in mind that this was not seen on the 8 AI Plus or the original Claw. So I'm guessing this is just to keep, the heat on the Z2E in check. Now, when it comes to the audio side of things, the audio speakers, they're fantastic once again. I don't know what the heck they're doing. I don't know, what is going on, but the audio is fantastic. There's plenty of audio and clarity and range on these speakers. There's plenty of bass for the size and treble to boot. But, honestly, I don't have any complaints when it comes to the audio. And I love the audio in all of the MSI handhelds. They're always fantastic. So who is this for? All right, let's talk about who this actually is for, because this PC handheld space is blowing up. I mean, there's PC handhelds from all sorts of companies that are out there at this point that are trying to get into the limelight. And I would say that this is for the person that is okay with an LED panel. Someone that doesn't want to pay almost $2,000 to play on a PC handheld, but still wants the Z2E in terms of performance. Someone that doesn't want to have to deal with the design of the Xbox Ally X visually, because it is extremely comfortable, but doesn't want to dish out almost $2,000 for the Z2 Extreme processor. Again, $2,000 is almost it's crazy to me. Performance wise, if you have a Z1 Extreme PC handheld, then you don't need to upgrade. The only benefit that you get is that mid-range that's there. And I'm talking about, that 17 watt mid-range, but anything above that, and you're going to be looking at 5 to 10% gains, maybe 15% in some, cases, but it's really not that big of a difference. Now, if you're in the market for a brand new PC handheld, then this one has a lot of great things going for it. If you want to see how the Xbox Ally X actually stacks up against the Legion Go 2, which are the next PC handhelds that are there with the Z2 Extreme, then check out this video over here. I appreciate your time, guys. Thanks for watching, and I will see you on the next one. Peace.